It's also the closest
Every open bar needs. That's actually My dad wants
All right, we're going to get started. We're having some technical difficulties. We don't have a working microphone at the moment, but they're working diligently on that. So hopefully we will pretty soon. But Mr. Allison and I will do our best to speak up so the whole room can hear. And let me welcome you. I'm Dr. Eric Finn.
1, 2.
And we're making progress. It's my privilege to welcome you to the second annual Distinguished Speech in Ethics. And we're able to do events like this because of the vision of individuals who did things like create the endowment for the Uncommon Friends Chair in Ethics, which is my honor and privilege to hold at this time. And I would like to particularly thank some of the key benefactors of that endowment who are here tonight. Bob and Linda Taylor. It's to their generosity that we owe an evening like this, so let's show our appreciation to So our first distinguished speaker last year was Dr. Mark Livingston, and he had quite a stirring speech about his experience in which he tried to do the right thing, although his employer, the Department of Homeland Security, for whatever reason, decided to really put him through a ringer and demoted him. He was basically the equivalent of a 3-star general, got demoted 2 ranks, and had some bogus sexual harassment charges brought against him. He had bogus financial misappropriation charges brought against him. Shortly before he came and spoke to us, he was given whistleblower status by the United States Congress. And his talk was very much about how every day he continued to come to work with a smile on his face and a commitment to do what is right. So we know that positive examples like Dr. Livingston's and Mr. Allison's that we'll hear tonight are consistent with the types of approach to teaching and learning ethics that we know works. We all want to be surrounded by positive examples. So I encourage all of you, I tell my students all the time, read about people that are heroic and inspirational to you. If you learn about the people that did the wrong things, we know that doesn't impact ethical behavior much. But if you hear and surround yourself with stories of people doing the right thing, that will increase your own ethical action and behavior. The second approach we take to teaching ethics here is to use a program called Giving Voice to Values. And that was actually created out of kind of a breakthrough insight, which in some ways is kind of obvious. But the insight is that most of us at work are not faced with the classic ethical dilemma of being torn between 2 different things that are right choices. That actually what most people face are dilemmas where they're tempted or pressured to do the wrong thing. And they know it's the wrong thing, and they also know what the right thing to do is. And so we talk about how do you give voice to your values. So the largest group of folks in this room are students in our organizational ethics and values class. And so after you've been through that course, I know that for the rest of your lives, you all, why don't you get him set up and I'm almost done. Yep. For the rest of your lives, you will always be able to speak up if you are in a situation where you're being sexually harassed, or if you're in a situation where your employer asks you to fudge some numbers or anything like that. You all will be equipped to speak up. I also tell my students that I consider people to be heroes if every day they wake up, their small decisions, their big decisions, they choose to do the right thing, because it's not very easy to do that in life today. So all of you who are doing that, I consider you to be bona fide cape-wearing heroes. And so that's what I encourage you to do for the rest of your lives and careers. And so I would like to introduce one of my heroes to you all tonight, and that's Mr. John Allison, who will be giving our second annual Distinguished Speech in Ethics. And Mr. Allison, in his career and as 20 years a CEO of BB&T Corporation, made that commitment to do things the right way, both small decisions and big decisions. Now, in his case, those decisions led to some pretty substantial accomplishments. So like any prominent individual that may come and speak to us, his resume of credentials and experience is lengthy. So I'm only going to mention just a few examples to you. First of all, from the time that he took over as CEO of BB&T, they had $4.5 billion in assets. And when he left the job after 20 years, they had $152 billion in assets. Harvard Business Review, probably the most prestigious journal in our field of business, has listed him as one of the top 100 CEOs in the world. And finally, he's written 2 books, one of which you all are privileged to have this evening. I would also like to say that I was able to do some studying of John Allison and BB&T and published a prominent article in one of the top journals, Academy of Management, Learning and Education, and through that process also got to know John as a very intelligent and caring individual. He gave me the neat and unique opportunity of going through BB&T's Leadership Development Program. So let's give a warm welcome to our second annual.
Thanks, Eric, and good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I always enjoy talking to bright young people who will be future leaders in our society and the people that are already in a leadership position. The topic of my presentation is the philosophic fight for the future of America. Before I get into the presentation, I want to give you a little context, however. After I was CEO of BB&T, I ran an organization called the Cato Institute. I'm going to give you my elevator speech for Cato because I think it'll give you some context for my speech. Cato is the world's leading libertarian think tank. Our mission is to create a free and prosperous society based on the principles of individual liberty, free markets, limited government, and peace. We really do believe in limited government. We think that government ought to stay out of your pocketbook. We also think it ought to stay out of your bedroom. We think government has one very important but very limited purpose. The purpose of government is to protect individual rights. It's to keep me from using force or fraud to take what you've earned, and to keep you from using force or fraud to take what I've earned. And in that context, we view government as having 3 legitimate functions. National defense to protect us from bad guys overseas, police force to protect us from bad guys in our neighborhood, and an efficient and effective court system so when you and I have a legitimate dispute, we can solve it without resort to violence. In our ideal world, we'd have 95% less regulations and far more effective courts than we have today. The reason that we think it's important that government be limited, it has a unique and potentially extremely dangerous authority. It has the authority to initiate the use of force. Governments have guns. Walmart can offer you special deals. They can try to entice you with low prices. They can beg you to come and buy their products, but they can't make you. The government can make you. They can take your property. They can put you in jail. They can kill you. In fact, throughout history, governments have killed hundreds of millions of people. Commonsensically also, human relationships that are based on voluntary exchange have better outcomes than relationships based on force. And government is about the use of force, because if force is not necessary, government is not necessary. So next time you like to pass another law or another regulations, and even if you would like the outcome, ask yourself if you would use a gun to make somebody obey that law who disagreed with it. And if you wouldn't, you shouldn't, because that's what government does. All right, with that context, let me talk about the philosophic fight for the future of America. I believe there's a very deep, ethically based struggle going on for the future of the United States and the future of Western civilization. It's a fight that will have a profound impact on your lives, and particularly the lives of your children and your grandchildren. We talk about the divide in the United States, but it's a lot deeper than people really understand. On one side are those of us in what I call the classical liberal tradition. We believe the Founding Fathers had it right when they defined the principles that underlie a free and prosperous society. It's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. On the other side are the statists of all stripes. Statists are people that believe that government has the solution. There's statists across the political spectrum. There's plenty of right-wing statists. Right-wing statists tend to want to control your personal lives. Left-wing statists are much more interested in your money, although they're getting somewhat interested in your personal lives. I want to specifically focus on a very powerful philosophical movement called the progressives. The progressives you can think of as more radical left-wing, although they have all kind of different elements in them. It's an old movement that goes back over 100 years. It failed and has been resurrected, and it now dominates the elitist college campuses in America. It's a very dominant philosophical position on college campuses. Progressives strongly believe that a group of elitists in Washington, D.C., acting in their perception of the common good, know better how you should live your life than you do. And they strongly believe that. Underlying their belief are three kind of philosophical pillars: altruism, collectivism, and egalitarianism. Altruism, collectivism, and egalitarianism. Altruism is not benevolence. Benevolence is a very good thing. Altruism is otherism. It says that everybody's important but you. Everybody's important but you. Now the problem is there are only but yous in the real world, which means that individuals aren't important. Individuals are irrelevant. The proper standard of value, according to the progressives, is the collective, the group. What's good for the group. And they, as collectivists, they have a perception of what they believe is the common good. The problem is their perception of what the common good is largely an oxymoron. The Founding Fathers wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. They pretty much defined all the real common good: freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Today, when people are talking about the common good, what they're usually talking about is good for me and maybe not so good for you. Good for my group, not so good for your group. Good for the taxi drivers, bad for Uber. Good for General Electric, not so good for General Electric's competitors. Good for teachers, maybe not so good for students. Good for the unions, not necessarily very good for business. So what we have going on in Washington, D.C. today is group warfare. Each group claiming that they are acting in the common good. And by the way, if something were really equally good for all of us, would we be fighting about it? No. Underlying these philosophical pillars is the progressives' perception of justice. And justice, which is obviously an ethical concept, pretty much defines your political position. And the progressives' view of justice is what I'll call radical egalitarianism. Now, the United States, to some degree, is an egalitarian society. All men were created equal. When the Founding Fathers were talking about egalitarianism, however, they were talking about equality before the law. Just because you were the son of a baron didn't give you any special rights. The progressive concept of egalitarianism is equal outcomes. While it's true that everybody ought to be equal before the law, and it's true that every human being ought to be treated with dignity and respect simply because they're a human being, it's not true that everybody's equal. In fact, I have never met two equal people. Everyone in this room has a unique set of strengths, a different set of weaknesses, different abilities, different goals, different objectives. We're all unique, special individuals. That's the good news. That's what makes human life so interesting. We're all unique, special people. We're all individuals. However, we're not equal. At the extreme, Thomas Edison and the Boston Strangler are not equal. The only way to get equal outcomes from unequal people is to use force to take what one person has earned and give it to somebody that hadn't earned it. Now, the force can be about taking money, but it can be about a lot of other stuff. So progressives fundamentally are in the business of using force to take what one person has earned and give it to somebody that hadn't earned it. Let me concretize egalitarianism for you with a story. I'll tell you a little bit about where I went to school and what my age is. One of my heroes was Michael Jordan. I thought Michael Jordan was not only a great basketball player, I thought he was a real inspiration for poor kids. This will surprise you, but I am not as good a basketball player as Michael Jordan. There's a serious differential in performance. What's interesting is that I can't possibly be as good a basketball player as Michael Jordan. I don't care how hard I tried, how hard you tried to help me, I cannot get to be as good a basketball player as Michael Jordan. I can't do it. You cannot make the average great. You can make the average better. That may be a very productive, very noble thing to do. But you cannot make the average great. However, you can make the great average. And egalitarians, by definition, have to be in the business of making the great average. It's very easy to make Michael Jordan as good a basketball player as me. Just cut his legs off, right? You say we wouldn't do that. I don't know. We've been pretty tough on great people throughout history. We poisoned Socrates, imprisoned Galileo, burned Joan of Arc. Today we're more sophisticated. We do it with lots of balls and chains, lots of mind-numbing government rules and regulations, high marginal tax rates. What many people fail to realize is that great people make a disproportionate contribution to human well-being. Everybody in this room and your children and grandchildren have a better life thanks to Thomas Edison. Edison not only invented the light bulb, he invented electrical generation, he invented the research laboratory itself. Put balls and great chains on great people and reduce the quality of life for all of us. Egalitarians like to claim the moral high ground. And he that owns the moral high ground wins the fight. Sometimes people think the arguments are about economics. They're never about economics. They're always at the end of the day about your perception of ethics. And he who owns the moral high ground wins the fight. And who can argue with everybody being equal? Well, I don't think egalitarians have the moral high ground. Because I think what motivates egalitarians is the most destructive of all human emotions, and watch it in yourself. It's envy. It's hatred of the good for being the good. Incredibly destructive emotion. By the way, egalitarianism is a lot worse than I just told you. Because take any human attribute, by definition, half the people are above average and half the people are below average. Half the people are above average in intelligence, half the people are below average in intelligence. Half the people are above average in athletic ability, half are below. Any attribute, by definition, half are above and half are below. How do you get to be equal? The only way to possibly be equal is to go down to the lowest common denominator. Let me concretize that for you. I grew up in a church where the preacher wanted everybody to sing very loud but me. I am a really bad singer. I am a really bad singer. It would be tragic if everybody had to be equal to me in singing. If everybody had to sing as badly as I do, a lot of the beauty would go out of life. And guess who would lose? I would lose. I would lose. Now, when you get to debate progressives, which I've had the joy of debating on college campuses, they'll always come back because they don't really like to face the consequences of their own arguments. And they'll say, well, we really don't mean to go that far. So here's a question, how far do you want to go? You're not going to cut Michael Jordan's legs off, but what are you going to do, cut 3 toes off? And here's the interesting question. Who decides how many toes to cut off of Michael Jordan? That's when the power lusters show up. That's when the tyrants show up. Because they know exactly how many toes ought to be cut off of Michael Jordan in the name of the common good, of course, always. We'll say, well, no, we don't really mean that. What we really mean is equal opportunity. It's a long way from where they started. But interestingly enough, equal opportunity as presented by the progressives is another oxymoron. Half the people are above average in intelligence, half are below. Half are above average in athletic ability, half below. Half are above average in artistic ability, half are below. What's equal? If you're above average in intelligence, below average in athletic ability, I mean, where does all that weigh out? How does all that get to be equal? Something that you'll see when you get to my age, and probably some of you at your age are even seeing this. You see siblings, brothers and sisters, raised in the same family. Same genetic pool, same DNA, same culture, same socioeconomic status, same school, same everything. Radically different outcomes. Radically different outcomes. And what's interesting is which outcome is better. And maybe somebody makes more money and is not very happy, and maybe somebody makes less money and is happier. How does all that, how do you even make a judgment of what that means? No, we aren't equal. We're unique, special individuals. That's what's good about human life. The Founding Fathers had it right. It's equality before the law that matters. How about the other side of this argument, what I'll call the classical liberal position? Those of us that are advocates of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Each individual's unconditional moral right to their own life. Each individual's unconditional moral right to the pursuit of their personal happiness. Each individual's unconditional moral right to the product of their labor. If you produce a lot, you get a lot, including the right to give it away to whoever you want to for whatever reason you want to.